I love FDR.
You love FDR?
Yes, and I love Eleanor Roosevelt.
All right, well, up next, Hannah, Cardi B, the pop star, whose famous song WAP is a huge hit among conservatives like Ben Shapiro, is now dipping her toe into politics once again, this time to praise FDR as her favorite president. Take a listen to this clip.
What stays in my mind for a long time is that I went to FDR's house. If anybody loves me, know me, I love FDR.
You love FDR?
Yes, and I love Eleanor Roosevelt. And you know how he got us through the Great Depression with a war.
Mm-hmm.
Only president that got elected 4 times while he's in a wheelchair. As I grew up reading a lot about Eleanor Roosevelt, she had a very sad life. And like when I went to her house, well, she had different house from her husband because, you know, FDR mama, she was always around, like, and she didn't really like that. Like, Eleanor wanted her space. Just like me, I want my own space all the time. I saw the room where Churchill and FDR was talking about the nuke. That is crazy to me. Like I'm really here. I don't know why. I'm obsessed with war.
So, Miss Cardi B, in her typical eloquence, thinks that FDR was amazing, apparently, and is spreading that message to the millions of young people who hang on her every elucidating word. Hannah, your thoughts?
It's disappointing because I actually am a fan of Cardi B. I think she's quite funny. I actually like her music a good bit. And the interesting thing about Cardi is that I think she's kind of like many Americans, where she'll be really based on something and then she loses the plot because she doesn't actually understand what's going on. So it's like, I remember a few years ago, she went on this awesome rant about her taxes and where her tax dollar is even going and the price of things. And it's like she almost starts to get it, but then she doesn't actually flesh it out enough to see behind the scenes. FDR was a monster. I mean, probably second only to Woodrow Wilson in this country, but I have a personal vendetta against FDR. I used to do my historical deep dives on the original series of Base, looking into what broke the system, right? And I would dig into healthcare, or I would dig into the criminal justice system, or I would dig into unions. I would dig into all these like overarching problems that we still deal with and unpack how we ended up in the mess that we're at right now. And along the way, the train always went off the rails around FDR's presidency. That's when things really started to like get really, really bad. There'd always been some problems, and then boom, you have him come along. I mean, he had so many bad ideas. He did tremendous damage to this country. And it's really such a shame that the victors get to write history, because that's what you see her spouting there, right? She toured his house. She got some facts from the tour guides about him and his legacy. She was excited to see the room where he decided to nuke a bunch of innocent people. Like, the Japanese government attacked Pearl Harbor, but the people that we killed in Japan with those bombs, many of them were innocent people. And there's great debate over the ethical decision to do that, whether or not it was truly needed to win that war. And it's just such a glossing over of history and the true issues at stake there. And it's unfortunate, because if you go through public school, or even most school curriculums, you kind of get this version of FDR too, right? That he came in, he helped win World War II, helped stop Hitler. It's like, well, he also blocked Jews from coming here as refugees. He put Chinese people in internment camps in California. Like, and this is just what I'm talking about on a like just human standard, right? There's many more things he did terribly under the economic policy, but it's really upsetting to me that I think he was an actual like war criminal and monster and awful person, and that he instead gets remembered in this way. And by the way, he won 4 terms because we didn't have term limits before FDR. So she acts like this is this big accomplishment.
Yeah, we had to enact them because of him. Everyone else had just followed George Washington's lead in only running for 2 terms. We had to actually add them because of FDR and his refusal to give up power.
Yes, exactly. So this was hard to swallow. It was really unfortunate. I wish she's one of those celebrities, though, you wish you could sit down and have an hour-long conversation, because you could probably turn her, make her a libertarian real quick, right? But nobody's ever presented her with some of this information. So I hate it. I hate it that she hasn't had more of an education around our history and around economic policy. I hate it that most Americans don't get that. And seriously, people need to familiarize themselves with our history and with who did what and how we got to where we are, because as I've said for some time, if you fail to understand the root causes of problems, you will always prescribe the wrong solutions. And we still have a bunch of Democrats running around wanting to continue implementing the same kinds of policies and ideas that FDR had, that have had such a terrible pathway throughout the past couple of decades and have had so many bad repercussions and secondary side effects. And if you just took the time to understand that, you would no longer want to implement the kinds of things this guy wanted to do.
No, you wouldn't. And look, it's crazy to me. It's not just Cardi B. It's Joe Biden and so many other people in this country. They openly glorify and aspire to be like FDR. FDR was a tyrant. FDR locked up native-born American citizens in internment camps because they looked Japanese. He tried to pack the Supreme Court and destroy part of our institutions and our political system as we know it because they wouldn't uphold his agenda. And he actually cowed them into reversing some of their rulings with that threat. So he went to circumvent our constitutional order. He clung on to power until his death instead of following, the George Washington lead and only doing 2 terms. He got elected 4 times, Cardi. Yeah, that's actually bad. And then this idea that his policies were effective and somehow got us out of the Great Depression is an enduring myth. So I want to read you a really fascinating quote. I was reading up on this. This is from fee.org. The Great Depression of the 1930s was by far the greatest economic calamity in U.S. history. In 1931, the year before Franklin Roosevelt was elected president, unemployment in the United States had soared to an unprecedented 16.3%. In human terms, that meant over 8 million Americans who wanted jobs couldn't find them. In 1939, after almost 2 full terms of Roosevelt and his New Deal, unemployment had not dropped, but had risen to 17.2%. Almost 9.5 million Americans were unemployed. And this is the money part. On May 6, 1939, Roosevelt's own Treasury Secretary, Henry Morgenthau, confirmed the total failure of the New Deal to stop the Great Depression. This is a quote. "We are spending more than we have ever spent before, and it does not work. I say after 8 years of this administration, we have just as much unemployment as when we started, and an enormous debt to boot." Look, it's one of the enduring myths of our time that FDR saved us from the Great Depression. In fact, a lot of people think his New Deal policies lengthened and worsened it. And one of the other culprits was the Smoot-Hawley tariffs that were signed before FDR, but he could have worked to repeal much earlier. They really made the Great Depression worse. All in all, I just can't imagine any other basically president in history that could have done. Like, imagine if people just praised Andrew Jackson despite the Trail of Tears. Like, it wouldn't be viewed as normal to just idolize somebody who committed such rank atrocities against our own citizens or against people who did nothing wrong. And yet when it comes to FDR, because he laid the foundations for the modern welfare state that progressives so much are so in love with, they just give him a pass. They basically just like they think we can't have a statue of Thomas Jefferson because he owned slaves, but FDR can be their hero despite locking up Asian-looking American citizens. It doesn't make sense. I do believe you can evaluate people who are historical figures and separate the good from the bad and look at pieces. And I would be willing to do that with FDR. I still think it's mostly bad.
It's like 5 good.
Yeah, he did a few things that were good, but yeah, mostly bad. I'm willing to have that nuanced conversation, but progressives are like, well, any founding father who owned slaves is all completely terrible. We can never think anything they did was good. But also FDR, yeah, forget that whole Japanese internment thing. He gave us more welfare. Like, you can't have it both ways there, folks.
Yeah, but I don't think that's just isolated to FDR. I feel like they do this with almost all Democrats, right? They never want to talk about the downsides to their administrations or to their tenures, even up to Obama, right? I mean, there's so few people on the left that will actually reckon with Obama's awful foreign policy and many of his civil rights violations. He was the biggest, most punitive person towards whistleblowers I think I can recall in history. There's so many problems that you see with him. But it's a trend that continues where they will castigate any member of the right for any small infraction that they make, and yet they will sweep massive amounts of really troubling things under the rug for anybody who just has a D next to their name. And I'm not saying that the right doesn't have somewhat of that tendency, but the media is not in lockstep with the right. And you don't have the public school system in lockstep with the right that is rewriting the history books and forgetting to include all these really important facts. And so you do get this presentation of history that's completely inaccurate, right? It makes me think of Hamilton, the musical, when they say, who writes your story, who tells your story? It matters. And that's why I have such an issue with our education system, such an issue with the media, because you really are getting such a one-sided view of history unless you go do your digging. And that's why it's so important to take the time to do that, because nobody's going to educate you but yourself.